By July 1944, the Normandy campaign had become a grinding contest of endurance, terrain, and tactical adaptation. The Allied landings on June 6 had opened the door into northwest Europe, but the German defense west of Caen and south of Kärnten had proven far more resilient than planners expected. Normandy was not open countryside. It was a labyrinth, miles of bocage, each field bordered by an earthen wall topped with thick hedges, turning every advance into a series of miniature fortresses. Tanks could not maneuver freely. Infantry could not see 20 yards ahead. Artillery observation was often blind, and every hedgerow crossing risked rolling directly into an ambush. Yet across this claustrophobic landscape, the Allied push toward Saint-Lô continued. For American armored divisions, progress came at a slow, punishing cost. Shermans had to nose up over hedgebanks, expose their bellies, and pray a German gun wasn't waiting for that exact moment. Their speed and maneuverability meant little in terrain that punished movement. German defenders, on the other hand, exploited the bocage with precision. Panthers could position their long 75 guns behind hedgerows, fire from hull-down positions, and back away unseen. This was the tactical environment into which the Sherman crew at Le Desert had been thrown. Their regiment had spent the previous night attempting to push along a narrow lane toward the village crossroads, part of a broader attempt to unhinge German positions and create pressure on the flanks of Saint-Lô. Progress had stalled. Communications were strained, and reconnaissance was thin. Rumors circulated of Panzer-Lehr division, one of Germany's most experienced armored formations, regrouping for a counterstrike. Panzer-Lehr had been battered since D-Day, losing vehicles to naval guns, fighter bombers, and attrition. But what remained of its armored battalions still posed a deadly threat. The Panther, especially, dominated the mid-range duel. Its glacis plate could shrug off most Sherman rounds from the front. Its gun was frighteningly accurate. And in the hedgerows, where sightlines often existed only through narrow openings, a single well-placed Panther could command an entire field. American tank crews knew this well. Training back in the United States had emphasized mobility, cooperation, and open-field maneuvering, concepts that Normandy promptly shredded. They had adapted quickly. Gunners became experts at snap shooting. Drivers learned to inch forward until only the barrel of the 75 protruded past a hedge. Commanders memorized terrain features visible only from the height of a tank turret. Every crewman became accustomed to the feeling of fighting blind, fighting close, and fighting fast. By early July, the U.S. First Army was attempting to break the German defensive belts piece by piece. Each village taken revealed another layer of resistance behind it. The Shermans supporting the infantry outside Le Desert were part of that slow grind. For days they had engaged in small duels, sudden clashes, and close-quarters ambushes, the kinds of engagements where survival depended more on reaction time and positioning than on armor thickness. It was in these conditions that word arrived. Multiple Panthers were advancing from a nearby orchard, using tree lines to mask their movement. The terrain boxed the Shermans into a narrow corridor, but it also funneled the Panthers into predictable avenues of attack. For the gunner in the American tank, this was both terrifying and strangely clarifying. If the enemy came through that field gap, he would be ready. He would have one chance to place the first shot exactly where it mattered. And in Normandy, the first shot often decided the outcome. The stage was set. The Panther's strength, the Sherman vulnerabilities, and the terrain's unforgiving geometry all converged toward a single confrontation. And as the German engines grew louder, the broader context of the campaign, every gain, every loss, every pressure on both sides, compressed into one narrow hedgerow opening and one American gunner waiting for a moment he could neither avoid nor delay. The next day's light revealed the full complexity of the battlefield around Le Desert. Fields were carved into a patchwork of small plots, each separated by dense hedgerows and narrow lanes. The earth had been churned by artillery fire, leaving shell craters that could trap a tank if it rolled blindly. Trees, stripped of lower branches, offered both cover and concealment. Smoke from demolished farmhouses drifted lazily across the countryside, mingling with morning fog to create a gray, unsettled haze. Visibility rarely exceeded a few hundred meters, perfect conditions for an ambush. The Sherman platoon had learned to move in measured bounds. Tanks advanced one at a time, hulls angled to present the least target area, while infantry followed closely to secure exits and blind spots. Spotters scouted from elevated positions when possible, but the bocage often rendered their efforts ineffective. Every movement had to account for enemy Panthers, concealed Pak-40s, and hidden infantry teams with bazookas or anti-tank mines. The Americans were no strangers to risk, but each step forward was an exercise in calculated peril. German doctrine in Normandy emphasized patience and lethal precision. The Panthers that now moved through the orchards belonged to a battle-hardened cadre from Panzer-Lehr. Their commanders understood the terrain intimately. Unlike earlier clashes on the open plains of France, these tanks relied on concealment and interlocking fields of fire. They did not rush. They advanced in measured intervals, each Panther covering its neighbor. Even in retreat, their guns were a threat. Infantry and armor worked in tandem. A Sherman destroyed in an exposed position would leave a gap immediately exploited by German troops or follow-on armor. For the American gunners, recognition of enemy formations was critical. Panthers were formidable, sloped frontal armor, high-velocity 75 guns, and a weight that made them difficult to maneuver. A frontal engagement was usually suicidal unless the Sherman gunner could exploit a weak spot, the side armor, lower glacis, or a poorly armored flank during movement. Tactical manuals emphasized patience, target prioritization, and rapid reloads. Yet even seasoned crews knew that, in the confusion of a bocage skirmish, theory often met brutal reality. The platoon leader issued a low, calm order over the intercom: advance slowly, hold fire until targets were confirmed, and maintain spacing to avoid a single shot destroying multiple vehicles. The Sherman crew internalized the plan. Every eye scanned the gaps between hedges, every ear strained for the low rumble of German engines, every finger rested lightly on the trigger. Then, as predicted by both terrain and tactical intuition, the first rumble emerged from the orchard line. 5 Panthers, their silhouettes sharp against the muted green and brown of Normandy farmland, advanced methodically. Engines idling low, tracks whispering over churned soil, each tank projected quiet menace. From the Sherman's gunner's viewpoint, the target sequence was clear. Line up the first Panther at a distance where the Sherman's gun could penetrate, account for slope and hull angle, and fire, then immediately adjust for the next target. Seconds, not minutes, would decide the encounter. This precise, high-stakes ballet of machine, metal, and human decision was the culmination of all preceding events. The landing beaches, the attrition of German armor, the adaptive American tactics, and the unforgiving hedgerows of Normandy. Every factor funneled into the small corridor where the 5 Panthers now approached. The Sherman gunner, trained and alert, understood the calculus of survival. One shot missed, one hesitation, and the engagement would become a nightmare. The hedgerow framing the Sherman's position became both shield and cage. Beyond it, the enemy moved with lethal intent. Behind it, the crew braced for the confrontation that would test their training, courage, and nerve. Normandy's bocage had produced many quiet mornings like this, deceptive, tense, and deadly. Yet today, for this Sherman gunner, it would become extraordinary. The stage was now fully set. The convergence of terrain, armor, and human skill poised everything for a single, defining moment. The gunner's eyes narrowed, the commander adjusted his hatch, and in the distance, the first Panther broke cover, exposing the side the manuals always told them to exploit. Angle 1, human, the Sherman gunner's mindset. In the confined space of an M4 Sherman, a gunner experiences war in compressed dimensions. The smell of heated metal and cordite is constant. Every engine rumble or distant explosion registers in the chest, rattling nerves already taut from hours of vigilance. For this Normandy gunner, fear was a companion, but it was disciplined, channeled into precision. Training had drilled reactions into muscle memory. Identify the target, adjust for distance and armor slope, squeeze the trigger without hesitation. The stakes were visceral. One misjudged shot could mean not only the death of the crew, but also the loss of an entire tactical position. Mental acuity under such pressure became a rare commodity, the difference between survival and catastrophe. Each heartbeat seemed to echo in the confined metal shell of the tank. Yet, paradoxically, calm focus emerged in the eye of fear. The gunner knew that even amid terror, clarity could be his greatest weapon. Angle 2, tactical. Sherman versus Panther in bocage warfare. Normandy's hedgerows rendered open-field tactics nearly obsolete. Sherman crews could no longer rely on mobility or numerical superiority. Instead, engagements became microcosms of maneuver and countermaneuver within confined corridors. The Americans developed strategies for snap, firing from hull-down positions, exposing only the gun and turret to minimize vulnerability. Flanking was emphasized. If a Panther could be forced into a side shot, the 75 gun had a significantly higher chance of penetration. Coordination between infantry and armor was essential. Infantry cleared close-in threats, while Shermans covered lanes of approach. Tactical doctrine dictated spacing, communication, and prioritization of targets. Against 5 Panthers moving in a measured advance, these tactical principles were not just theory, they were survival. The gunner's role was pivotal, rapid engagement, disciplined target selection, and correct firing sequence could turn the tide in seconds. Angle 3, technological. Weaponry, armor, and fire control. The Sherman, though versatile, was outclassed in a straight duel with a Panther. Its 75 gun could penetrate the Panther's side and rear, but frontal armor was nearly impervious to standard rounds. Ammunition choice became crucial. Armor-piercing, AP rounds targeted weak points, while high-explosive HE shells served for suppression or secondary objectives. Gun sights were optical, requiring steady hands and careful alignment. Stabilizers were rudimentary compared to later designs. Shots on the move were risky. Conversely, the Panther's long-barreled 75 kW K-42 had exceptional accuracy and penetration, capable of punching through a Sherman at hundreds of meters. Crew training on both sides emphasized understanding one's own weapons, limits, and exploiting the enemy's vulnerabilities. In this engagement, knowledge of armor values, effective range, and hull angles would dictate the success or failure of every shot. Angle 4, enemy, Panther crew perspective. From inside a Panther advancing through Normandy's bocage, the world was a mix of constrained visibility and calculated aggression. The German crew, veterans of Panzer-Lehr or 12th SS, understood the Sherman's capabilities intimately. Their doctrine emphasized hull-down positions, coordinated fire, and patience. Each Panther moved with deliberate spacing, covering flanks and maintaining interlocking fields of fire. Commanders relied on observation ports and optics to gauge targets, often underestimating the Americans' adaptive tactics. The Panthers' frontal armor gave a sense of invulnerability, yet even seasoned crews knew the danger of side exposure or poorly chosen avenues. Psychological pressure was constant. Knowing that a single well-aimed Sherman shell could disable an engine or ignite ammunition required vigilance at every moment. In Normandy, even superior tanks had to respect terrain, enemy skill, and the unpredictable chaos of war. Angle 5, terrain, bocage, and battlefield geometry. The hedgerows were Normandy's silent commanders. Dense soil banks, sometimes several feet high, were topped with thick shrubbery, creating natural fortifications and concealing movements. Tanks could not cross these features blindly. Even a small slope could expose vulnerable flanks or immobilize tracks. Fields and orchards funneled vehicle movement into predictable lanes, turning even open ground into potential kill zones. Smoke, fog, and lingering artillery dust further reduced visibility, giving defenders and ambushers a crucial advantage. In such terrain, the same hedgerow that offered cover could trap a tank, making positioning critical. Understanding the geometry of the battlefield, sightlines, cover, and potential ambush points became as important as knowing the enemy's armor values. Every inch of ground could be a death trap or a tactical lifeline. Angle 6, leadership, platoon coordination under fire. Tank engagements in Normandy demanded split-second decisions from commanders. The platoon leader had to coordinate multiple Shermans advancing through constricted lanes, ensuring spacing to avoid mutual vulnerability while maintaining supporting fire for infantry. Leadership decisions determined firing sequences, approach angles, and when to hold fire versus engage. In the chaos of multiple Panther threats, clear, calm orders prevented panic and confusion. The leader's ability to anticipate enemy moves, guide gunners to optimal firing positions, and maintain situational awareness often decided survival. In this particular engagement, the Sherman gunner was the executor, but it was the platoon's leadership that orchestrated the conditions enabling him to fire with precision. Leadership under pressure fused training, experience, and instinct, a combination that could turn near-impossible odds into a moment of decisive action. The rumble of 5 Panther engines grew steadily louder, threading through the hedgerows like a mechanical heartbeat. The Sherman gunner tightened his grip on the sight, eye fixed on the faint silhouette of the lead Panther as it emerged from the orchard line. The first tank was perfectly positioned, side armor exposed, hull angled slightly downhill, engine compartment visible. This was the moment he had been trained for, the precise instant when patience and skill converged. He whispered the range over the intercom, measured against the target, and waited for the subtle tilt of the hull that indicated the Panther's center of mass. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then the first shot rang out. A clean 75 AP shell slammed into the side, igniting fuel and sending a plume of smoke into the morning haze. The impact threw debris and twisted metal into the air, yet the other 4 Panthers pressed forward, almost imperceptibly shifting their formation to cover the fallen lead tank. The gunner's mind raced. Target 2 now revealed its weak flank behind a broken hedgerow, slightly obscured by smoke but fully visible through the optics. He adjusted the gun's elevation, accounted for slope and distance, and squeezed the trigger again. The shell struck amidships, knocking out tracks and immobilizing the tank. He could almost hear the stunned hesitation of the German crew as the vehicle shuddered, smoke curling from its engine. Meanwhile, the 3rd Panther moved into a narrow lane between 2 fields. Its commander, recognizing the loss of his lead units, attempted to take a more aggressive posture, exposing the turret side. The Sherman gunner's hands were steady, each motion automatic, each decision backed by hours of training and experience. Another AP shell connected. Metal twisted, fire flared, and the tank began to list to one side. The 4th and 5th Panthers, sensing the vulnerability of their formation, adjusted their advance. One moved slightly left, attempting to cover the retreating vehicles, the other pressed the center. The gunner remained focused, tracking the shifts in position with razor precision. The 4th tank presented a fleeting window, the lower glacis briefly exposed as it crested a small rise in the terrain. The shot was calculated. Engine compartment, crew hatch. Impact. Flames licked upward, black smoke blotting out a portion of the morning sky. Time contracted. The 5th Panther, now exposed in the final open lane, was aware of the losses ahead but committed to pressing forward. The gunner anticipated the line of approach, calculated lead for movement, and fired the 5th shell. It struck at the side armor near the turret ring, causing catastrophic damage. The tank's momentum ceased, the engines coughed and died. The 5 Panthers lay in various stages of fire, smoke, and twisted metal, all destroyed by exactly 5 expertly placed rounds. The Sherman crew exhaled collectively, the tension inside the hull giving way to stunned relief. Around them, the battlefield was eerily quiet. Birds, previously startled into flight by the morning chaos, hesitated on the hedgerows' edges. Smoke and dust hung in the air like a shroud. In a matter of moments, a potentially devastating counterattack had been neutralized through precision, nerves of steel, and the unforgiving calculus of armored warfare. Yet this was only the first heartbeat of the engagement. Beyond the hedgerows, other German units were still maneuvering, artillery fire still crackled in the distance, and the Normandy campaign ground on with relentless intensity. The gunner had prevailed in this instant, but the broader battle had not yet revealed its next challenge. The final Panther shuddered as the 5th shot found its mark, flames curling along its side and turret. The gunner barely had time to register the impact before the remaining crews of the fallen tanks abandoned their vehicles, scrambling across churned fields in a desperate bid for cover. Smoke billowed upward, carrying the acrid tang of burning fuel, mingling with the morning fog that had softened the Normandy light. For a heartbeat, The battlefield seemed suspended, a momentary pause between chaos and the next wave of uncertainty. From the Panther perspective, the advance had become a nightmare. Commanders who had trusted their training and formation now faced the disorienting reality of an American tank crew capable of lethal precision under extreme stress. Communications over the intercom crackled with confusion as the surviving crews attempted to regroup. The terrain, which had initially offered concealment, now seemed an unforgiving cage, exposing weaknesses that a single gunner had exploited. The disciplined rhythm of German armored doctrine faltered, replaced by urgent improvisation under fire. Inside the Sherman, the gunner felt the hum of adrenaline receding. His eyes scanned the surrounding hedgerows, noting the subtle movements of German infantry who had begun to take cover. The tank commander issued calm, deliberate orders: assess, reload, and maintain awareness. No celebration, no exultation, the battle had only paused, not ended. Each crewman understood that survival depended on continued vigilance. As the smoke cleared, the 5 destroyed Panthers lay in their final positions. Engines silenced, turrets twisted, and hulls scorched. The field, once a corridor of deadly advance, had become a tableau of sudden, decisive loss. For the Sherman crew, it was an extraordinary achievement, the culmination of training, intuition, and courage under fire. Each shot had counted, each calculation had mattered. It was a microcosm of armored warfare. Precision and patience meeting brute force in a high-stakes contest measured in seconds. Yet the engagement also highlighted the harsh calculus of war. One misjudged distance, one delayed squeeze of the trigger, and the outcome could have been reversed. Every Sherman and Panther duel was a confrontation of human skill, mechanical reliability, and terrain mastery. Normandy's bocage offered both concealment and danger, forcing both sides into tight corridors where the margin for error was razor-thin. The 5-shot triumph was a testament not only to the gunner, but also to the orchestration of a platoon and the integration of intelligence, reconnaissance, and tactical doctrine. As the morning light strengthened, the wider battlefield resumed its rhythm. Artillery shells continued to fall on distant villages. Infantry squads cautiously advanced, clearing hedgerows while supporting armor held critical lanes. The Sherman crew had survived one of the most harrowing encounters in the bocage, but the Normandy campaign pressed onward, indifferent to individual heroics. The psychological impact, however, was undeniable. For the American crews, it reinforced confidence in training and weapons. For German forces, it underscored the lethal precision they now faced at every hedgerow, every field gap. The decisive moment at Le Desert, frozen in the gunner's 5 exact shots, became a lesson in the brutal mechanics of war. Victory in a single exchange did not guarantee the campaign, but it demonstrated that courage, skill, and rapid decision-making could bend even the most formidable odds. The aftermath would ripple across both sides, influencing morale, tactical adjustments, and the interpretation of armored engagements for weeks to come. The battlefield was quiet, but Normandy was far from calm. The destruction of the 5 Panthers marked the end of one engagement and the prelude to countless others in a campaign defined by attrition, strategy, and relentless pressure on both men and machines. The field around Le Desert bore the unmistakable scars of the morning's encounter. Blackened hulls of Panthers smoldered, twisted metal reflecting the growing sunlight. The 5 tanks, each destroyed by precisely 5 shots, served as a grim testament to both the lethality of armored warfare and the discipline of the Sherman crew. Inside the M4, the gunner and his comrades allowed themselves a brief moment of quiet, acknowledging the stakes they had just survived. Every creak of the hull, every lingering smell of cordite and scorched fuel, reminded them that survival was never guaranteed. Reports from the platoon filtered upward through command channels. Reconnaissance verified the destruction. 5 Panthers confirmed lost, crews likely casualties or prisoners. The field sketch showed the narrow lanes of approach, the angles of shots, and the positions of the destroyed German tanks. For U.S. armored commanders, the engagement became a case study in precision firing, target prioritization, and terrain exploitation. Lessons learned here were immediately applicable across the bocage, where similar ambushes and narrow corridors were common. The psychological impact on the American tankers was profound. Training had emphasized the theoretical vulnerabilities of their M4s against Panther firepower. Yet, executing those lessons under extreme stress validated the doctrine. Patience, focus, and calculated aggression could overcome superior armor. Crew reports highlighted the coordination within the tank. Driver positioning, loader efficiency, commander observation, and gunner execution all had to align perfectly. Small missteps could have been fatal. For this crew, synchronization of skill and composure under fire proved decisive. Meanwhile, German command noted the loss with alarm. The destruction of 5 Panthers in a single hedgerow encounter, particularly by a single gunner's accuracy, was unusual enough to trigger immediate tactical reconsideration. After-action reports emphasized the need for improved scouting, avoidance of predictable avenues of advance, and enhanced infantry support to prevent similar losses. Within Panzer-Lehr, morale was shaken. The psychological weight of losing tanks to precision fire from what they considered inferior armor underscored the attrition already eroding German armored capabilities in Normandy. The engagement also demonstrated the interplay between terrain and technology. The hedgerows, which had previously favored German defensive positions, could be exploited by observant and well-trained crews. Tactical doctrine evolved to incorporate lessons from this and similar encounters, reinforcing the principle that effective positioning, angle exploitation, and timing could offset the raw firepower advantage of a Panther. For the individual Sherman crew, the aftermath was a mixture of relief and vigilance. Fires were extinguished, damage assessed, and ammunition counted. The surrounding fields were secured as the platoon pressed forward, aware that the broader battle for Normandy's villages was far from over. Each soldier internalized the experience. Precision, composure, and teamwork were not abstract virtues, but the lifeblood of survival in this campaign. Their actions would become a touchstone for other crews facing Panther threats, a vivid illustration of the human and mechanical factors that could alter the balance of armored engagements. Beyond the immediate battlefield, the consequences of the Sherman gunners' 5-shot triumph rippled through both sides. German units in the sector were forced to reassess their approach. The loss of 5 Panthers in a single, narrow engagement was more than a tactical setback. It was a blow to morale and an example of how the bocage could suddenly turn lethal, even for veteran crews. Commanders emphasized tighter infantry support, alternative avenues of approach, and greater caution in advancing through exposed corridors. Panzer-Lehr's after-action notes underscored the unpredictable lethality of American gunners trained for rapid target acquisition and disciplined firing sequences. For the American forces, the incident reinforced confidence in combined arms doctrine. Infantry support, coordinated observation, and disciplined armored maneuvers validated months of training under the harsh realities of Normandy. The precision and composure displayed by the Sherman crew became a teaching example within the regiment. Senior officers referenced it in briefings, illustrating how individual skill, crew coordination, and tactical awareness could neutralize technically superior German armor. The gunners' actions were not isolated heroics. They were the product of deliberate training, repeated drills, and an understanding of both terrain and enemy capabilities. Casualty reports confirmed the loss of German personnel as well. Some Panther crews were killed in the blasts, others surrendered, forced to abandon their vehicles under fire. American infantry secured the area, documenting the destruction and taking prisoners where possible. The count of destroyed tanks, corroborated by both U.S. field reports and later intelligence, offered a rare, clear outcome amid the chaotic ebb and flow of Normandy engagements. It was a tangible reminder that even a small, disciplined unit could influence the broader campaign when opportunity and preparation aligned. The broader strategic significance lay in the demonstration of how small unit actions could shape operational outcomes. While the Normandy campaign was defined by massive offensives and high-level maneuvers, moments like the Sherman gunners' engagement illustrated the cumulative impact of disciplined, precise, and adaptive soldiers on the battlefield. The bocage, so often seen as a defensive advantage, became a proving ground for American innovation in armored warfare. Each hedgerow encounter, each narrowly executed ambush or counter-ambush, contributed to the gradual erosion of German armored resistance in the region. By the end of that day, the lessons were clear. Training saved lives, awareness dictated survival, and precision could overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. For the Sherman crew, the adrenaline of the confrontation faded into reflection. The field would be cleared, the report filed, and the campaign continued, but the memory of those 5 shots, perfectly executed, would linger as a measure of what disciplined courage could achieve in the crucible of war. The engagement at Le Desert was over, but Normandy's bocage continued to demand vigilance, skill, and unwavering resolve. In this landscape, every action had consequences, every decision carried weight, and every moment of courage could tip the balance between life and death. In the quiet that followed the destruction of the 5 Panthers, the broader significance of the encounter slowly became clear. War, often measured in miles gained or tanks destroyed, is ultimately decided in moments of human decision under pressure. The Sherman gunners' 5 precise shots were not mere luck. They were the culmination of training, discipline, and instinct honed through countless hours of preparation. In that instant, the interplay of human skill, machine capability, and terrain mastery coalesced into a fleeting but decisive act. The Normandy bocage, with its dense hedgerows and hidden lanes, had long been a proving ground for armored ingenuity. For the Americans, it was a landscape that demanded adaptation. For the Germans, it was both shield and snare. The gunners' triumph demonstrated that technological superiority alone did not guarantee victory. Comprehension of the battlefield, anticipation of enemy movements, and composure under fire were equally decisive. In the confined space of the Sherman, human courage became the true weapon. This engagement also reflected the evolving nature of warfare in 1944. Battles were no longer only about massed formations or frontal assaults. They were tests of decision-making, precision, and coordination. Every soldier, every crewman, became a critical component of a larger system. A single error could cascade into catastrophe. A single act of skill could tilt the field. In the arc of the Normandy campaign, encounters like this one, small in scale but rich in consequence, exemplified the cumulative impact of countless individual actions shaping the broader course of history. Ultimately, the story of the Sherman gunner is a human story. It is a testament to courage under pressure, to the mastery of craft, and to the quiet heroism that often goes unrecorded in grand narratives. 5 shots, 5 tanks destroyed, a precise moment in time that echoes far beyond the fields of Le Desert. It reminds us that even in the vast machinery of war, human skill and determination remain decisive. In the end, Normandy did not yield easily. Yet, in the smoke and fog of the bocage, amidst the roar of engines and the crack of artillery, one gunner's actions demonstrated the profound truth of combat. Preparation, courage, and clarity under pressure can change the tide, one shot at a time.